Um, Leanne and myself, Mark Stoddard, would like to welcome you to this technical meeting. I'd like to do just a very brief introduction, and it probably won't, do justice to the qualifications of both Tony and Leena. But Tony has a vast quantity of experience, about 25 years or more. He is the past chair and current member of the National Steering Committee. He serves on most of the committees. He has two small businesses, which includes the nation's largest children's consignment store. Leena is also a vast wealth of knowledge and experience. She's done technical assistance on both air and water quality. She has a degree in agricultural engineering and a Ph.D. in integrated water resources. So I probably should say Dr. Divakar, if I pronounced your last name correctly. Prior experiences include the Department of Health and Environment, stormwater permitting, the dental amalgam program, nutrient management, the Pollution Prevention Institute, and so forth and so on. Without further ado, take it away, both Tony and Leena, and you decide who wants to start first.
Okay, well, we flipped and we decided I'm going to go first just so I can give a little history of AAPCA. And I think that'll be helpful as a background because, lots of times when I'm talking to people, most of us haven't been around for a quarter century. And so that history just helps you to know where you stand and where we've been. And I think it like gets you up on the shoulder so you can go from there instead of starting from scratch sometimes and stuff too. So we are here today to talk about AAPCA. This was kind of a fill-in topic. We had planned on doing something else, and we'll do that later still when all the speakers are available. But AAPCA is something that I've been involved with for quite a while. It is an organization of state air agencies, and it was birthed in 2012 from a split with NACA, who you might be more familiar with, the National Association of Clean Air Agencies. And it's really about the same thing. I don't know of any significant differences between the two of them. It represents 51 state and local agencies, so less than NACA, I'm pretty sure. And most of those state agencies are members of, most all state agencies are members of either one or the other, and some states are members of both. I think what that means is you got to pay dues to both, but some states just determine that's worthwhile. So I started attending the fall business meetings. That's what they're called, business meetings, but as Leena will tell you, they're really technical. And I started attending those about 8 years ago, I think, and became friendly with the executive director there, which is easy to do because this is a small group of people that come to these. We're talking around 140 people or so. And they go out of their way to just be really friendly, get to know you. They're expecting you. They printed out your name badge and looked you up and know some stuff about you and whatnot. And so they're pretty good like that. In 2016, that former executive director of AAPCA was made Deputy Assistant Administrator, or DAA. That's what EPA calls them, for air and radiation. And his new boss was also an acquaintance who I'd spent some time with when we were both speakers at an Air and Waste Management Association conference, AWMA. I'll try and do all the acronyms, but if I don't tell you one, let me know and I'll get it to you. So prior to that guy being named AA, although I had heard that his name was on a short list when we met, we conversed about the SBEEPs and challenges we've had with EPA, and it was a really good time. I got to tell him a lot of our background and stuff. And then shortly after, he was made AA. So I had actually approached EPA's Outreach and Information Group over a decade ago. It was a long time about adding small business to their list of supported groups, because they have community and tribal and other stuff like that. And one of the leaders of the group that I'd known for many years told me very honestly, which I really appreciated, that she had been given 24 priorities and until an AA says that small business was a priority, she just couldn't add anymore. She just can't add it to the list, and I doubted I'd ever get an audience with an AA, so set it on the back burner and didn't think about it for a while. But once I had an in with the AA and support from his DAA, that's the deputy, I invited him to join our SBEEP annual conference, and he agreed. And that was one of the first times we've gotten such a high-level person to our annual conference. And I think most of the people that went to that were expecting a usual dog and pony show, from such a high-level speaker, just some highlights of what EPA does or something. But instead, what he did was he asked what we wanted and why, and he just listened. And so everybody got to go up there and tell him a little bit more about us and tell him how, SBEEPs are mandated under the Clean Air Act and how EPA should make a priority out of this. And it had an effect. That led to a realization from EPA that they needed to add small business as a priority. And at the next fall meeting of AAPCA, EPA announced from the podium that their new priority of small businesses right alongside communities and tribals. So I was pretty psyched about that. We were starting to make some headway. Sometime later, a new position was created in EPA's Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards, or OAQPS, which, by the way, that's one of those acronyms that you probably want to memorize if you're going to work in the air business. It's a weird one, I know, but OAQPS, once you get used to it, it slides off the tongue. But they created this position to liaise with us, which is Rhonda Wright, and they reinvigorated and staffed the regional small business liaisons, which was pretty great because some of them were pretty inactive, gone for many, many years, like in Region 4. And we are currently waiting on a document from OAQPS to provide details regarding our relationship with that office going forward. And we've been waiting on that for a while, but I do know that they're working on it, and we hear about it all the time, and there's a lot of people reviewing it, I think. So hopefully one of these days we'll have some great news to share. So some other notable interactions include recognition, presentation, cross-promotion, service, and networking. Now on the recognition front, I went to them and asked if we could be treated as an MJO, or multi-jurisdictional organization. If you don't know, there are MJOs that represent groups of different states. In Region 4, it's called SESARM, Metro 4 SESARM. But I think pretty much every state has a regional group that oversees them and provides training and has meetings and stuff like that. I know some of us are a little on the fringe of the air quality agency, and so it can be hard to know what is going on at the air agency because they don't know to tell you or invite you or to make you a part of it. But these things are going on, and then that's kind of how I found AAPCA. Was just poking around a little bit and not knowing how much our air agency was really doing with them. They combine all these MJOs and they talk to them frequently about training and stuff like that. And so when I asked them that, they immediately started treating me like that, us like that. And they have a weekly calendar that they send out. And at the bottom, they have a list of MJOs and a link to their calendar. And they put our calendar on there from our national website. So that was great. And they just, really do a good job of including me. And really what they send me now is also what they send to your air agency if you're a part of it. And I'm sure NACA does the same thing, like weekly updates of everything that's going on in some detail. You can always find some good trainings and stuff like that. So that was great. They reward innovation by featuring best practices. A few years ago, I won an award for my 6H Autobody RegNav tool. And that included doing a presentation to many of your air directors and EPA and others with a significant plug for SBEEPs. I included that at the end of, hey, these are the kind of things we can do. Why don't you let us help? When there's a rule that involves a bunch of small businesses, we make tools and stuff, and we're good at that. So involve us. So after I got to share with them what the SBEEPs do, I invited them to share with the NSC. And then we also extended this cross-promotional opportunity to NACA as well. And, you know, our representatives got to talk on their meeting, and they came and talked on our meeting, and we just kind of reinvigorating relationships, which are, you know, really, really key, I think, in some of the stuff that's going on. It's good to have some partners and some people with more clout and bigger soapboxes and bigger audiences to know what's going on. So as an NSC rep, they allow me to serve on committees and attend meetings on special topics like MM2A. That was a very lively meeting. Appreciated being on that one. And every year they do little breakout breakfast conference meetings. And this year they did it on the different committees. And one of the committees I'm on is the training committee. And the great thing about that was I was able to get one of the EPA attendees, one of their speakers, to commit to talk to his boss about how my auto body LMS, or learning management system, could be incorporated with the new air knowledge LMS that EPA is using to train people. Because not only is it good for, you know, training us, it's good for training the auto body sprayers, but it's also good for training the inspectors. And that's kind of a focus of air knowledge. And of course, the networking is one of the best parts of most conferences. And this one in particular, they make a lot of opportunity for that. It's a fairly small number of people. You know, a lot of people don't know each other, and it's easy to just go talk to them and find out where they're at. You know, a lot of different states there and stuff. Now, because OAQPS is based in Research Triangle Park in Raleigh, North Carolina, EPA sends a bunch of attendees, like around 20, and including most of their local leadership. So the higher ups are coming. Peter Sirigotis is almost always there and does a talk and talks about the priorities for OAQPS, which, you know, is where all the rules come from. So Research Triangle Park does a lot of the work and then sends it up to DC. And so that's where most stuff is coming from, all these rule writers for niche apps and NSPSs and stuff like that. And that's also the reason why the fall meeting is always in Raleigh, while the spring meeting moves around. So I hope having some of that history helps you, helps answer some of the questions on why you might want to attend a meeting. But please be assured that I have spoken to their executive director, and every SBEEP is invited regardless of whether their state pays dues or not. So you don't have to look at their map and see whether your state is on the list or something. They know that the SBEEPs are a little different, a little on the outsides, and sometimes not in the air agency, and therefore need some support and need some knowledge, and are welcome to come. So last year, Paula attended the meeting, and this year we had Lucy Cross from Arkansas and Leena from Kansas. So hopefully we can keep doubling that and keep some more people coming. And in hopes of more people coming next year, Leena is now going to share with us a case study and her experience. And then we'll have some more time at the end for some questions and for some other things that we learned while we were there.
Thank you, Tony. Well, unlike Tony, I have put some slides here because he could just speak on AAPCA, but not me. And like he mentioned, I recently had the opportunity to travel to North Carolina and attend the AAPCA business fall business meeting. First of all, I would like to thank our director, Nancy Larson, and also Tony for encouraging me to go to this conference. And also thanks to the technical subcommittee for letting me present what I have learned there. And I'd say that there were really some of good presentations that I've seen, but one that stood out was a case study from Ramble Consultancy. They presented on PFOS, the importance of air quality pathway. And this was an eye-opener for me because my background is water resources, and I had learned mostly PFAS in water resources, and to know that it has an importance in the air quality as well was an eye-opener for me. So before going there, I would like to just show you what the agenda included. So these were some of the topics that was discussed, and the PFAS, what I was talking about was on the emerging compounds and air quality. And there were several updates from EPA, like Tony mentioned, and there was a lot of importance given to the climate pollution reduction grants and the SIP and permitting updates from different states. Also, we had the directors present about the NAICS perspectives and challenges. So it was all very interesting and, very knowledgeable. So coming to the case study, I don't know why my mouse is not working. Okay, this is the importance of the air quality pathway, and it was presented by Matthew Traister from Raleigh, and what he mainly highlighted was the growing significance of PFAS, and which is persistent class of harmful chemicals. And he said how the airborne dispersion can spread through atmosphere, creating pathways for human exposure, and how this is often overlooked and overlooked, in regulatory and monitoring efforts. And he emphasized the need for collaboration between different regulatory agencies and industries. That was the gist of the presentation, but this is, I would also like to say that since this is not my work and I'm merely expressing my views, so I just wanted to tell that I did not follow everything, but there's the slides over in the AAPCA web page, which you may refer and you might get more out of it. So this was a slide there showing that state efforts to regulate PFAS in air quality. And again, that was an eye-opener that there are several states that was already doing this. And so you just put the slide so you can take a look and see whether your state is there in that. So the case study mainly involved that it is a surface coating facility, and they made a very thin gauge wire, which was mainly used in the pacemaker. So the facility, what they said is like 45,000 square feet, and it has like 40 plus years of kind of same operation done. And the main thing was they had manual and spray application coatings, and they used this solvent and aqueous-based coatings, and they had oven there, and also discharge was through vertical stack discharge. And the problem what they found was PFAS in nearby wells, private drinking water, which was above the regulatory thresholds. So this prompted them to do an extensive investigation. And this is what, for the investigation, this agency, they did, they wanted to know what are the contributions of this current and former facility operators. That is, the former one, what they call as the OPS legacy, and the current one is OPS current, what they have mentioned here. To know that the P4, it was actually P4 concentrations in different media, like whether in stormwater or groundwater, everywhere. So what is the, how it came, especially in the well and all that. So what they did is this purchase inventory records for, last years of operation. You see, for the past 32 years, they were using the coatings that was full of P4I, and then later for 4 years that was about again 250 ppm, and they said that for recently they were using 0 PFOA, but zero incense might not be zero, because what they said is the operators may not know what they when it comes to PFOA and PFOS content purchased in materials, and the legacy one had more PFOA compared to the one which they were using currently. So this was one of the investigation they carried out. So again, good slides by them, and how they showed how this is like the conceptual model for dispersion and deposition cycle, how dry deposition happens when it comes through the stack, it falls on the roof and it's all over the roof. And then from here, it goes to, particular matter, it's released to the atmosphere. And then there is, wet deposition through settled in cloud and coming back as precipitation. And there's also long range of transport, which was really interesting. I never thought about it, and how there's uptake of all this in vegetation, and then there is re-emission of these from back to the atmosphere, and from the roof, when it gets rainwater, it comes to the stormwater, and from there to groundwater, and also it kind of deposits in the Vadose zone for several years. So that was really interesting as well. Again, so what they showed is how they were trying to see how they got this 2.9 gallon per year of PFOA, whether it was from current or from the, whether it was from the previous, the legacy, or from the current one. So this is what they were trying to do. And so what they got from the roof was much lower than what was expected than this. And so that was their takeaway. And again, this was interesting. I had never seen, which they had showed that how there's deposition of all these. This was PFOA or PFOS and PFOA getting deposited on the stack, So, and these materials where this was all PFOS residue that is left on the roof. And I heard that they had changed their roof completely, and even then there was high level of PFOS in the stormwater system. They changed their ductwork as well in order to reduce the PFOS. So these were their findings. So mainly that what they are saying is it cannot be from the current one. So it was mainly from the legacy ones. So basically all that got stored in, and it can come out after so many years, because even after changing their roof and the ductwork, they could still see PFOA. So that is what the main takeaway was from that. And again, so whatever they say PFOA free in process may not really be PFOA free, because depending on the parts per trillion thresholds, and there is aerial deposition of PFOS emissions not concentrated around source. But like I said, it may be long deposition, long travel, or air pathway might be long. So again, there is storage in Vadose zone, and this also can be a significant factor, especially for long-term operations. And this was really interesting for me. I mean, it was truly an eye-opener, and that's what I would say, that this was my takeaway as a first-time attendee mainly. What I say is, as for the detailed agenda here was AAPCA website usually did not have the technical agenda fully printed there. Maybe Tony can explain that, but Tony had sent me the full agenda. So just by looking at it, you might think that it's a business meeting and not very technical. And that's what Nancy mentioned when she saw that first, and then she had to see the detailed agenda, and then I got the permission to go. So, and like every conference, like saw that, you know, I got different professionals from various government representatives and industry experts were there, and who shared their insights. And like Tony mentioned, it was abundant networking opportunity, especially with the breakout room. Well, Tony could go to in the training committee, and I didn't have a specific place, so I sat with the people who were doing permitting and compliance. So it'll be nice that if we could get something from, small business table as well, like if that would be really nice. And witnessing, firsthand research to improving air quality and public health was really inspiring and engaging. So that's all I have here for you. Thank you. And I would like to say that if you guys have any questions, maybe I can answer, but let's discuss. Yes, thank you.
Well, I can start by answering a question. Here's the deal with the agenda. Because they're inviting a bunch of really high-level EPA people, and their schedules are prone to being changed around and different people substituted, and for a myriad other reasons, they don't put a lot of detail on the agenda that's on their website. They think that everybody who's a part of it has registered, or because it's free to register, you can just go on their website and register, and then you get detailed information, or is getting the updates regularly anyway. But people like us might not be getting those things. So that's why I had to send it to Leena. And that's why I always have to go looking for it. You can't just find it on their website. You have to look for an email from them with an agenda that's detailed enough for management to sign off on you going. By the way, it's always less than $200. I mean, it used to be like 110, 175 this year.
Government.
And they do feed you pretty well. There's like 2 breakfasts, I think, and a lunch, and then there's heavy hors d'oeuvres on the first day with a cash bar. So, and that's a nice time to just relax with some people and get to know folks. So that's why they do that. And of course, you're always welcome to email me if you need a more robust agenda and can't find it otherwise. But Jason is their executive director, and Morgan is his assistant, and they are always happy to help people out. I really can't think of anybody that's more responsive than them. They're pretty great. They get right on things when you have issues. I give them ideas, or hey, maybe we should talk about this, or this thing's coming up, and they jump on it, and they'll contact people in committees and say, hey, let's have a meeting on this. So, what other questions are out there?
Hey, Tony, this is Mark. You mentioned during your talk the MM2A. I imagine this is a little early for AAPCA to talk about it, but maybe they'll be talking about it in the future with regards to how now we'll be addressing the MM2A, which seems like there might be some shifts to the way it used to be.
Yeah. It was certainly a topic, and it was a concern that everybody had. It had just come out a week or 2 before the meeting, I think. And you may recall that since I was interested, I've done talks on Once and Always into AWMA and different places before. So I was pretty interested in seeing what it said. So I went ahead and kind of read it, read it without a ton of detail, and I made up some bullet points and sent them out to Maine. So everybody should have those. Interestingly, even though it was just a first pass, and I normally would never share something like that with my air quality folks. They're in a different agency and stuff, and I figured they got people doing it. At this conference, I happened to sit by the air toxics person and the permitting person. And we were talking about MM2A, and they said something, and I said, they said something leading, and I said, yeah, I did a little summary of it. And they begged, please, can we have a copy of that? I said, well, okay, but this is really just first pass, just, don't cite it or anything. And then they ended up sharing that with other folks that like, hey, look what Tony did, and this really helps us out because we don't want to read those 61 pages of Federal Register notice and see all that stuff. And so they used it for some of the other things that I do with them, like permit work group and compliance work group and stuff like that. And if you have more questions about MM2A, that, I would point you to that summary that I posted to Maine about a month ago.
Yeah,
What
this
other-
and yeah, I think it was about a month ago that you posted it, and it's definitely been a good summary. Even it might have been a first pass, whatever. Yeah, your first pass is usually catches all the good items, especially with your connections, like we're talking about today. Just putting in a plug that comments for MM2A are coming up due, and if you do have ideas that what we want to comment on, please let me know. I also want to say that Tony, through his connections with Jason as well as Miles over in NACA, Jennifer and I did present to NACA. I don't know that we've gotten a direct presentation to AAPCA, but both of them have come on technical, or actually, no, I think it was the NS. I can't remember whether it was NSC or technical, maybe technical. So that was definitely very informative. And through that, I get well, it's supposed to be a weekly digest, but it's more like 2 or 3 times per week.
when big stuff comes out.
Yeah. Of what's going on throughout the country, including anywhere from job openings to rural meetings to committee meetings. It's pretty comprehensive.
And so here's a big question that I have, and I'm hoping that somebody on this call can speak to what NACA does, and do they have a similar email update that comes out once a week or more often? Who is monitoring that? Who knows? I'm sure it exists. I haven't talked to Miles directly about that because we're not a NACA state, but who knows? Raise your hand, unmute, tell us, please tell us.
I think we might be a both here in Tennessee. However, I'm not connected well enough to get any type of update like AAPCA sends out. So I am unsure about that.
Okay. Well, one thing about AAPCA and which is based around me asking about the MJO stuff was when we had kind of lost touch with OAQPS on the small business side for a while. That was one of my big asks from EPA is because I knew that AAPCA and NACA and different groups were getting information from EPA. Like as soon as EPA had it, as soon as they sent it out, these organizations had it and they were sending it out to their members. I was like, how do we get to be a part of that? And then, I got it through AAPCA, but really when Rhonda came along and now she gets those things, and as soon as they cross her desk, she forwards them on through our email. So it's nice to have that connection that we have through OAQPS with Rhonda, so we can find out things right away. A neat thing that happened while we were there is there was a lot of belly aching about AERR, as you can imagine. And states were like, we already do our own thing, and this is going to be impossible. And how are they going to QA, QC it? They had a lot of concerns, and they were voicing these concerns. But while we were there, Jason, their executive director, sent a request to EPA for an extension of time to comment, and he does that all the time. I mean, most of the rules, but this one he said, you know, hey, you got all these other major rules that are up for comment like at the same period, and then we're getting ready to get into the holiday season and stuff, and you know, we need some more time on this. And shockingly, I think he seemed a little shocked by it. He got an answer that same day that said, okay, we're going to extend the comment period for AERR, which is air emissions reporting rule. And so he shared that with me, you know, that day that he got it. And that was, you know, weeks before it came out to everybody else that that's what was going to happen. So it's one of the kind of things that you get when you go.
Yeah, on that one, I think Jason might not have been the only one asking for an extension. So
Oh, of course not. No, a lot of people.
yeah, I was in a meeting last week on this topic, and it's actually at the point that our state is looking at a direct meeting with EPA to discuss it and may not accept it. Meaning we will not be doing the reporting. It may go directly to EPA. And that's partially on a cost basis because there is a significant cost associated with it. And depending on the budgets of some states, they may not be able to handle that. I think it was somewhere on the other order of a 250,000, maybe annually, or maybe first time setup. I'm not sure which. And that's just based on staff time to handle it. And it doesn't even involve like the outreach to get businesses to start doing it.
Yeah, and when you think about the fact that a lot of these businesses are going to be unpermitted, never talk to a regulator, don't know anything about air quality permits or anything, never had to think about any of this stuff. And some of these pollutants reach down pretty small amounts, way below 10 tons. So that would be quite a wake-up call and a pretty hard thing to accomplish.
Yeah, I think on the plus side, because they do have specific NIACs that would have to report for AERR, it does limit it down, and in a lot of cases, those industries may already be covered under a NESHAP and therefore should have a permit at some level.
But isn't it most manufacturing, like pretty much everything
Yeah.
starts with 2? It's
Or
a
three,
lot.
three.
Three.
So it does cover a huge area. Based on a quick analysis of just codes, I estimate about 54,000 businesses in Tennessee. However, that also includes warehouse, which would include the like self-storage lockers. So it's like there's thousands of those. So it's like, all right, the numbers are a little bit off. It's better to look at states that are already doing this, and they probably have more reasonable numbers. And so it should be anywhere from 1,300 to 2,000 businesses in a state are most likely to have to report.
You know, another thing we learned is it's not only us asking for extensions or other people like us. EPA has requested an extension of the PERC dry cleaner rule until December of 2024. So I found that interesting.
Yes, I find that very interesting. We're talking December of 2024, not December of 2023.
Yeah, I think their court ordered deadline was like February something, and they didn't want to meet that. It was going to be hard, especially I think with all the stuff going on with TSCA and banning, and you know it's pretty interlapping and stuff. So they said, hey, we promised to do some, but we just need more time.
So is it the TSCA rule or changed to subpart M that's being delayed?
I'm pretty sure it was in the presentation on NESHAPs, and so it's subpart M,
Okay.
the PERC dry cleaner.
You
know, they're related.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Let one go through that might have stronger implications.
Yeah, I think so.
On the topic, like any of the states, like, are you putting this information about the pork ban in the calendar or something, upcoming proposed rule?
I haven't, what I normally do is when I learn something from AAPCA, because I'm the liaison with it, I report it to the NSC, and it gets in the minutes, and then the reps and alts who are attending know, and I don't know if they do anything with it or tell their states.
No, I was talking about the dry cleaner calendars.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, I don't have a dry cleaner calendar anymore. Got taken away. So I'll let somebody else speak to that.
anybody else who's doing that? Like, has anybody put any information, just wanting to know that for the next year calendar, if anybody's doing that, so we might as well.
When I did
I-
have a calendar, I used to put it in, stuff like that in whenever there was an update.
I'm wondering if states are kind of pulling back because they see the number of dry cleaners that still use perchloroethylene dropping.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't know how many sources of perchloroethylene that dry cleaner can access, but if I understand correctly, you have to put money up front if you want to purchase a new perk dry cleaning machine. And there are some implications if you happen to buy a used one and move it to your location, then you are now subject to it being a fourth or fifth generation machine, which may mean retrofitting it.
Well, my point was mainly, should we, I mean, sometimes it scares them. So it's like it's gonna happen in December. So it's like, are we already warning them, those potential ones? So yeah.
In the case of the TSCA rule changes, I think they weren't actually going to go into effect until about April. So that would be past the point at which most calendars might be released, if a state still does a calendar. There may also be changes between the proposed and comment period and the final. So I would be really iffy about sending something like that out. The best I might say is, if you have a third generation machine, start looking at changing. That I think is pretty assured that that's going to go through.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I would concur with Donovan. In fact, actually, I don't know what the percentage of the dry cleaner operators that still use perk that might speak Korean or Spanish or some other language as their primary means of communication. But I think if you're going to communicate, start looking now, you should do that in at least Korean and Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, we have Korean and Vietnamese. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
So last year, when I went to the meeting, the big thing that got everybody riled up was EPA floated a proposed rule to require enhanced public comment and review, and possibly even down to individual facilities covered by permit by rule. And the states that were there immediately started pushing back on that. And we talked about it at length in the NSC when I came back and reported on it, and we were all quite concerned. This year, EPA on their update said they had a couple bullet points on it and probably accidentally skipped over it. And then somebody said, hey, what about that? And they went back to it and said, well, yeah, we're going to put that on the back burner, and that might become guidance, but it's likely not going to become rule, because there was a lot of pushback on that. And I think it was first floated there at AAPCA fall meeting last year. So, I think they use that sometimes as a way to judge the temperature on some things that they're thinking about.
Yeah, and I think some of that might work better as a guidance, as you say, rather than a rule. Because this sort of goes back to ARR in that what they're asking is pretty comprehensive and extensive. And based on the feeling from my air group is, yes, we can see the point of this data, but EPA might be going about it the wrong way from a state perspective. So it's like, yes, this is a good thing. It's not a good implementation. So it sort of sounds similar to the idea that enhanced public comment, and that may be one reason why so much of a push is, yeah, it might be a good idea, but let's not do it this way. But of course, that's what the comment period is about, is like, how can we do it a different way?
Well, and that brings up, you know, I'm sure we've all been to many conferences. This is the kind of conference where they have the microphones ready to go for the people to ask questions, and they always leave time for questions, and they always have some time to chat about these things. So what an opportunity, you know, to ask questions directly of the rule writers or the policy people who are implementing this stuff and whatnot. I talked to the guy who's working on MM2A. I asked him from, you know, while he was up there giving the presentation, if he knew of any facilities that have used MM2A since the Bill Wareham memo of a few years back. And they say that there's over 210 facilities that have used that to drop down their classification. If to their knowledge, any of them had backslidden and increased their emissions, and they admitted that no, that they didn't know of any that had done that. But the new MM2A rule proposal is heavy on that. It basically says you have to take limitations as if the rule still applied to you, the MACT that you're getting out of. So I'm not even really sure how beneficial it is, but it's strong on that. They call it safeguards, but you'll see that in my little summary.
Yeah.
What other questions do we get? Nothing in the chat. Come on, guys.
Yeah, nothing to chat. So yeah, one of the things that does concern me about the MM2A anti-backsliding things is they do talk about it being a federally enforceable limit. Typically, from our standpoint, what that means is it's not necessarily a state issued permit. Instead, it's similar to a standard Title V permit that while the state may do all the legwork for it, it has to be EPA approved. So it's almost, there becomes very little difference between a Title V permit for a natural Title V source and a permit for a former Title V source. So I can certainly see states having some issue about that.
Yeah, I think they were pretty keen on making certain that EPA could overfile and that citizens could file suit against these facilities.
I think that may be one point at which we as the NSC can make comments on the MM2A is, while yes, it's good to have provisions in there, it can also be covered under state permitting rather than have to be federally enforceable. I sort of see that as the EPA has the door open for they want to enforce directly as opposed to a state, but I believe they already have that option anyways. Because that would be in general under the overarching idea of Title V, where EPA has overall oversight over pretty much anything.
Okay, if nobody's going to raise their hand, would somebody raise their hand and say, I want to come next year to Raleigh in the fall? Is anybody going to say that? I'd love to see it.
Well, I could say I want to come, but management
There we go,
hates me
Leanne.
otherwise.
I'm in.
Well, of course, yeah, we all have to deal with that, but you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah, that's true. One more thing on MM2A. I'm thinking there might be entities because their actuals were much less than their potentials that may have fell out of permitting altogether. So that means they might be drugged back into permitting.
Yeah, as I recall, and I don't have my summary up, but if you go to a true natural state, you don't have to do anything. It's not for them. Like, say you were covered because you used a solvent, and then you just flat out stopped using that solvent. You drop down to a natural minor or off the books, and there you wouldn't need any federally enforceable stipulation. So
The
they
problem is some of those methodologies for calculating potential to emit tend to be very generous.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a problem, but yeah, they did say, and this is a big part of it, is that they plan to clarify potential to emit soon. So that's coming too, and that's going to be big. It's going to be big for us. I mean, as it is, I'm sure you guys deal with the same thing I do. I try and explain to a small business, no, I got to know, like, if I paid you $1 million, what's the maximum amount of stuff you can make this week if you had all the resources you need and stuff, and that just freaks them out because that doesn't make any sense to them. But they said, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
We
I,
talked about that to them, to EPA.
Yeah, we did. We
Yes.
we got to go right up and talk to them direct, right?
Yes,
And let them know about some of our concerns, and that's a good thing.
because they said that it will be enforceable and things like that. Punishable, enforceable. So that's what I asked. Yeah.
yeah,
So potential. Oh, go ahead, Donovan.
definitely looking forward to any of those because I totally agree. Sometimes it's really nuts when, yeah, it's a facility that maybe operates 2,000 hours a year, and their average is 1/10 to even 1/15 of what the potential is. It's just so far out there. It's like, no, this isn't even close to reality.
Yeah, I just had a case where I had a boat builder who makes one boat a year, and Air Quality was saying he needed a permit. And I was like, I don't think so. There's no way that this one boat a year is going to cause trouble. We just had to prove it.
At least you didn't have to take limits to be a non-Title V
Yeah.
vehicle major with one boat.
Hey, here's something crazy that I learned that I never thought I'd learn at this conference because I didn't really even think about it. A virtual smoke school was just approved. So now you don't actually have to go out in the field and watch somebody make smoke. You can do it virtually. Who knew?
That is pretty cool. Considering how I think only 2 states still had an actual smoke school, and everybody else put it off to a third party. Yeah, we're the other one.
Yeah, I thought so. Which has got to be hard. Why California doesn't have one? Now, come on, they'd have to.
As far as I'm aware, there's
Oh my
only
goodness.
us two that actually, as a state, still do it.
Okay. I used to love it because I was good at it. And if you're good at it and you get it right on the very first try, they give you a hat. And so a lot of us would collect our hats from getting it right the first time. Nobody's even going to ask Leena about the Bluegrass Festival that's going on and how much she enjoyed it.
No, I really did not enjoy that. He's just saying because it was so difficult for me to get a hotel nearby because by the time I decided I couldn't get a room in where the conference was held. So I was in the Overflow Hotel, which was like 10-15 minutes away. And because of the Bluegrass Festival that was going on, all the hotels in downtown were all booked. A lot of people with musical instruments. Yeah.
A lot of people. And the good news, I think, is that the World Bluegrass has decided to go somewhere else next year. So they will not be in Raleigh for the first time ever, I think. And we're building a new hotel right downtown. So, but it won't be ready for a couple of years.
May have to look for it around here because I think at one time there was something like that, and that was a very unusual opportunity in which we had a representative from the Norwegian Environmental Lighthouse come and speak to our Office of Sustainability group at the time.
Wow.
And he was actually really in town for a bluegrass festival, but took the time out like, hey, I want to meet another country's sustainability while I'm there. Anyways, it sounds like questions pretty much wrapped up. So Mark, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you. I think Leanne had to leave. So thank you very much, both Tony and Leena, for sharing your knowledge.